Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Homfray Embroidery. Welcome to another Chit Chat Tuesday. Hopefully in last Friday's video you saw Jonathan and I take this beautiful sampler, 18th century, made in 1799, took it out of the frame. If you haven't seen that video, do check it out, it's quite exciting. We made it up as we went along. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. If you haven't seen that, go and check that one out because it's quite interesting. What happened to it in the frame and what happened getting out of the frame, but it is now out of the frame and I can almost feel it breathing a sigh of relief that it's out. It's kind of gone, whew, relaxed a bit because it's not under that horrible frame with horrible things happening to it. So I've been living with it for a week and I'm learning a few more things about it, and I've got a few decisions I've made and some stuff to show you. So I just thought I would go through with you what I have found out and what my plans are, and just add a little bit more knowledge to this beautiful sampler. So I've had a close look at the materials it's made out of, and what I didn't mention in Friday's video is actually the embroidery itself is in really good condition. The stitches are in good condition. The fabric, not so much. The fabric is the problem, and I've been doing investigations. I think we've worked out why that might be, but it would be interesting, I thought, just to see what the fabric might have looked like. So it's a bit mucky. I'll show it you again. This is on a bit of acid-free paper, by the way, so it's nice and protected. So you can sort of see that it's kind of a creamy colour. It's a bit mucky up in the corners, but I found some linen. I had a little look through my stash and I found some linen that I think it probably looked like, and you can see how sort of cream it is. So it may not have been quite this white, but it probably wasn't far off this, so it has changed in colour dramatically. I also counted the thread count on it, and it's about 35 threads to the inch. This is about 35 threads to the inch, and it's got a bit more of an open weave, so you can actually do counted work on it. You can do counted cross stitch on it, which is on the sampler. So it is super fine. It's not very big to count on at all. So I've got some linen that's not far off it, so I might try a little bit of the stitches that have gone on there on this, just to see what kind of things that they were working with in those days without good electric lights and glasses and all of that stuff. So I think it would have been more like this colour when it was original. This is about the same count. The width of it is interesting, so it's 33 centimetres wide, that's 13 inches, and this is a standard width. The edges are the selvages of the linen. And they have turned the edge in once and they have hemmed it, so it's probably good practice for hemming things for the young ladies when they had to hem their linens. So this is quite a standard sort of size for these samplers, and they will just buy it woven in that width. I have tried to find some that width. It's quite hard to find. Zweigart do a band linen for band samplers, which is a bit narrower, so I'm going to keep looking, see if I can find something that is this size and this count. Probably not going to find that count, but I'm going to keep looking and see if I can find that. So it is interesting, hold up again, that this is the width of the woven fabric, so it was made for young ladies to do this. So it just shows you how popular it is. You know, it was part of their everyday education to make these, and this is the width that it the linen came in, so this is the width of the samplers. So I mentioned the stitching is actually in good condition. I think it would have been done in a silk. I can't really think what else they would have used. It's not another linen thread. It's not linen. It's got a nice shine to it, a nice sheen. And because it's silk, it is in quite a good condition. I'm quite surprised actually that hasn't degraded at all. So I think it was done in silk. And it's got these stunning darning samples in the corner, which is why I think it's silk, because this is where you can see the shine of it. But I've got some pictures, I'll put some up for you on the screen now so you can see them closely. And the darning sample on closer inspection is the same in every corner. So I'm presuming she would have started in the top left corner, not the best one. So it's interesting to see the improvement throughout the corners of the darning. Practice does make perfect. She practiced the same pattern with the same threads in all four corners, and you can see that improvement. So it's really interesting to see that this was an actual practice piece. She was learning something. This is Mary, when I say she, Mary Townsend. was actually learning when she made this piece. This is what it was about, learning these techniques that they could take into their future and that they would use in their households. For their linens and for their clothing and everything like that. It was an education a young woman would have needed in those days. So I had a close look at the lettering and the wording on this sampler, and then this can tell you a little bit about when your sampler was made. Now I have a date on mine, but if you didn't have a date on a sampler and you wanted to know, the letters are a good place to look because they're a little bit different from what we use today in modern times. So my first thing that I can see on this is U's and V's. Now it goes ST, what looks in modern language like VUW, but I looked it up. I looked at when did U's become used in alphabets, and it's really complicated. There's a long explanation of it, and I'm not going to profess to understand it and explain it, but basically in the Latin alphabet there were 23 letters, not 26. And it originates from that, and then it was more about the sound it made, and they would use the letter V instead of the letter U, and only in certain circumstances, and it got really confusing. But basically that's what's happening there. It's not that she's stitched them the wrong way round, which is what it looks like in our eyes today in modern terms. It's that the sounds were different and the usage were different. So that reflects when something would have been stitched on the usage of the letters. So the other thing that's going on in the letters is there is a J missing. So there are 2 J's in the uppercase letters and no J in the lowercase letters. So I don't know if this is something to do with the sounds in these alphabets and how alphabets are changed, or if she just forgot to put it in. I don't know. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't like the letter J and hasn't put it in. So there's no J in it. And the other thing in the small alphabet is the S. Now, if you see old text written, you might see an S written, looks a little bit like a modern F. It's called a long S, and an S that we recognise is called a short S. So these long S's were used if you've got like a double S in a word. Can I think of a word with a double S in it? Thankfulness. She's got one in here. So she says, myself to you in humble thankfulness. So the thankfulness is a long S and a short S put together. So that indicates that sound that the 2 S's make together. It was often used at the beginning as well, and then the short S was used at the end of words. So a really good indication of the time that something was made in. And I just wrote something about that. So the long S that looks like the F fell out of use at the beginning of the 1800s. This is about 1799, so about the same time. So it was still in use then. So if you've got no date on it and it's got a long S on it, you can probably date it quite well. So I thought that was really interesting to learn that. So the other thing that was interesting about this was the board that it was mounted on. And if you saw that video, you see how quite excited surprise when we found out. I'm going to take those bits off, put them back later. Quite excited to see this imprint of the sampler on this board. So this is the backing board from the beautiful gold frame that it came in. This is the paper that was underneath the embroidery, and there's this imprint of it, and it also, if you can see, it went through to the board, and we were quite excited about that. So we did a little bit of investigation into that. And I'm going to read this because, again, this is complicated. So I had a conversation with my sister about this, my older sister, Linda, and she has done some work on art restoration. And she said she'd done a course on paper and old paper and books and libraries and things like that. And I asked her about it, and she says, oh, I think it's wood pulp paper. So we had a little look up to see when wood pulp, that's not easy to say, wood pulp paper became a thing. So it would originally, paper was made from cotton. This made it quite expensive, lots of processes, and cotton was expensive. And then they started to make it with wood pulp. So this was first invented in the 1840s, and then larger production of this in about 1850s, which made paper a lot cheaper and a lot more affordable. But what happens to wood pulp paper is this, so it goes brown. So this was not brown originally. This would have been an off-white colour originally. So it's gone brown. So this is why we've got this imprint of the embroidery on the paper. So the wood pulp paper has lignin in it. This does complicated things with chemicals that I'm not going to even pretend that I understand. involving acids and basically makes the paper yellow and then turns it brown. So it's the lignin in the wood that has this chemical reaction that helps produce these acids, which is what damages the paper. So the sampler has been on top of this wood pulp paper with this lignin in it. The UV light, the UV light breaks down the lignin and speeds up this process. So the UV light on the sampler has broken down the lignin in the paper and turned it brown. The white bit is where the embroidery has been on top of it. It's kind of been like a barrier to the UV light. It's not been able to get through and has left this imprint. So that's why it's got this imprint on this paper, which I thought was really interesting. And if you've got any really old paperback books and they've gone this horrible brown colour, that is why. It's gone all brittle and brown and really horrible, and that's why. It's because of what the paper's made out of. So again, that helps us to date when the embroidery went into the frame. So the embroidery was finished, we think, in 1799. That's usually the date when they finished a sampler, but this paper didn't exist until at least the 1840s, probably a little bit later than that. So we know probably that it didn't go in the frame until maybe 40 or 50 years after it was made. So that's quite exciting to learn that, I think. These samplers were not made to go on the wall. We would make them now and make our beautiful embroidery and put it on the wall. As I mentioned earlier, they were learning pieces. So it wouldn't necessarily be, oh, I'm going to put it on the wall when it was made, but somebody's obviously seen it later and thought, I'm going to put that in a frame because it's beautiful, because it is beautiful. What is weird about this is these little bits of paper which fit. Let's find one that I can fit. This one was over it like that, so that little bit of paper was on the top and this sampler was on top of it, and I could see all these little pieces of paper, and I thought, well, why have you got a whole piece of paper, would you put that little bit on top? So I don't know if that was fastened on, I don't know why those bits of paper on it. There's loads of them, so you can see a bit more what the colour of paper would have been from when these ones are removed and underneath. So that kind of tells you, and obviously the imprint of the letters as well, but you can pretty well read the whole thing from that. So it's quite nasty, this paper. It's not very nice stuff at all. So I'm going to keep all these little bits, and then I didn't show you this in the last video because I didn't notice it. This one was along the bottom, and you can actually see the date. You can see Mary's name here and the date, and that was underneath that bit of paper. So maybe the paper just wasn't big enough. And then when I turned the paper over, just going to put that down, it's got this really interesting pattern on the back. It's a bit shiny. So no idea what that might have been. So something else to investigate. Don't know how to find out about that, but I shall do some digging and see if I can. But that's actually got a print on the back of it. So that's obviously something else. It has gone brown, so it is the wood pulp paper, and it's got the date on it. So it's obviously been on there a long time. So whatever this is the same age. So it would be exciting to know if that's got any interest, and that could give us any clues as to where this paper's come from. Now there was also, which I didn't notice initially, an imprint on the glass in the frame of the sampler. You can just make out the trees. So the glass has been sitting right on top of the embroidery, and there's an imprint on the tree. So I don't know if that would be some fibres or quite what that would be, but you can see the embroidery on the glass. So obviously really bad for that to happen. So the glass shouldn't be touching the embroidery. So if you ever get any embroidery framed, you need some spaces in it. The glass needs to be off the embroidery so it's not touching it and squashing it and damaging those threads. The other thing that will help when you frame it is a museum standard glass. It's got a special UV protection in it, and it will stop the rays getting through and damaging your embroidery underneath. So if you do want to think about that, it is an expensive way to go, this glass, this special museum glass, but it is really good if you want to protect your embroidery in the future from UV rays. So I'm not going to put this sampler back in the original frame. As beautiful as the frame is, if you saw that video last Friday, it doesn't quite fit in there. It's been bent round the edge and squashed in. The frame's not big enough, so I'm not going to put it back in the frame. I'm going to go in search of a new frame for it, but I might save this. I mean, it's not very nice, horrible paper, but it's got an interesting history to it. and it's part of the sample and part of the provenance of it. So I might just put this back in the frame. It's got this lovely old board on that came on the back with it as well. Oh, I need to mention something about that. Well reminded. So I'm thinking I might just reframe that. I don't know. I don't know. That's an idea I have. But I forgot to mention there is some writing on the back of the board. Now I mentioned this last time and forgot to elaborate. Put that over there. Just see a bit of the design on there. And it says on it, you can make out, it's written in pencil, Mrs. Griffiths. No, Mrs. Griffin, I think. And then there's something underneath which I can't read. 4 letters, but I can't read that. And then what looks like either a number or a date. Now the end numbers say 970 or 920. I can't read the first one. Doesn't make any sense. So I don't know what that is. Did Mary get married to a Mr. Griffin? And then look at her sample and go, that's really nice. I'll put that on the wall. And went and had it framed 40 years later. I'm just guessing at that. It would be a great story if it was true. But I don't know. So maybe, again, if I could find Mary Townsend around that time and she became a Mrs. Griffin, that would be really exciting. So, yeah, so that's on the back of the board. And I don't know why that would be written later. You know, if this has been in here since 1840s, 1850s, why would that be written on the back? Don't know. It might be later. I don't know. So that was interesting. So lots of exciting finds when you take something apart. Right, what am I going to do with it? So I found this folder. So this is all my notes from when I was on my Royal School of Needlework apprenticeship, and we did modules in the studio and we did some restoration and conservation, and these are all my notes on it. So I did more than I thought. I'd forgotten about these things. And as part of our training, we would go and learn some of the techniques used to restore things and conserve things. And I've got loads of notes on them. And now I know why I wrote those all that time ago, 20 years ago. So I'm going to have a read through those and see what's in there. I've had a quick look through and there is some useful stuff in there. Conservation techniques do change, but I think some of it's quite logical, really. So I'm going to have a look through those and just remind myself. But I found these little samples of some remounting, so putting an old textile onto a new board. So this is what I'm going to do with my sampler. So I'm not going to stick it on another piece of paper, especially one that's got lots of horrible stuff in it. I'm going to put it on another piece of fabric, piece of natural fabric, so it won't have any chance of all those horrible acids and stuff getting to it. So these are a few samples that I did. So I'll show you these in more detail when I actually come to do the sampler, but I'll just show you this one quickly. So there's an old textile on the front. It's 2 pieces of board inside. It's been covered with fabric and it's been mounted onto this new fabric, and it's got this nice backing on it as well, so nothing horrible can get underneath. The little bugs can't climb inside and all of that, really protecting it for the future. And this has got some darning samples, so my own darning samples, which are not as beautiful as Mary's, but anyway. They're quite practical and I can't really see them very well, so I've done them quite well. So I shall peer at that and peer at my notes and work out what the best thing to do is. But I just wanted to show you that because that's my sort of plan, is to put it on a board like this, stabilise it on the board, and then that can go back in a frame. So I found those, so I thought that was really interesting. And I do really want to give it a dry clean. I'm not going to wet clean it. It's so fragile, so many holes in it, but I would really like to dry clean it. As I move this stuff around, there's a lot of stuff coming out of it, a lot of just bits of dust and dirt and muck. And I would really like to do that. I don't have a conservation vacuum cleaner, which is basically one you can turn the power down really low, so it's super gentle, and you would put some net, some conservation net over the end, double it up, put it over the end, and you would just clean it really gently. And I really want to do that because I do feel it's got some muck in it. So I thought, how can I do that when I haven't got the right cleaner? So I had a little look online. I don't know if this is going to work or not. And I found a little tiny desk cleaner. This is a JML one, I think. There was a few available, and tiny little one. And I thought if I look for a rechargeable one, if it's too powerful, I could let the charge run down. So it's not so powerful, and maybe that would be okay. And I thought it was like 20 quid. I thought it was worth a try. And I looked in the reviews, and I looked for one that people said, oh, the power's really rubbish. It doesn't work very well. And I bought that one, which I guess nobody's ever done on Amazon. Bought one because it's particularly bad. And people said it wasn't that powerful. It is quite powerful for what I have in mind. If you're cleaning your car out with it, maybe not so much. So I'm going to have a little experiment with it, not on the sampler. Try it on some other things and see if letting the power run down in it makes it better, makes it less suction, whether I can just put extra things over the end. Yeah, I'm going to have a little experiment and see if I can do that, because if that works, that would be brilliant. I can just give it a really gentle dry clean and just get any muck and any nasty stuff out. I have got this little sampler, which I'm leaving in the bag because it's not very clean. Lots of rubbish coming out of that. So I've got this that I could actually just practice on and try it and see if I can get that to work. So I will only do it if I think it's not going to do any damage to my sampler at all. But I thought it was definitely worth a try. So I've also bought a few other bits and bobs. I've got a very fine thread, similar colour to the sampler, so if I want to do some stitching. I've also got that we sell in the shop, some invisible thread. These are both polyester threads. They'll be really strong, really good for repairing something. If I use a silk, nice to use a natural material, but that's not going to last either. So I need something that's going to last. So I can choose between those two. I'll see how they look on the sampler. I bought some pins. These are, and oh no, I can't remember the word, that you use to mount butterflies and insects with. Entomological pins. Maybe Johnny will put that up on the screen. I can't remember, but they're very fine pins used to mount insects in cases of, they're super fine and they're really long. So I bought some of those. That seems to be what everybody's using to repair things with. So I'm going to fix it to my board. I'm going to make my board, cover it, put the sampler on it, fix it with those pins very, very carefully when I stitch it. Still haven't decided whether I'm going to net it or not. I've just had another look. I think it really needs netting. It's got loads of tiny little holes, and it's going to be more darning than it is embroidery if I darn it. But I really wanted to darn it. I really wanted to see the embroidery in its condition, just stabilise it. So I'm still undecided about whether I'm going to net or not. I have got some conservation net here, so I'm going to make a decision about that at another point, and you'll have to join me to see what decision I make. So that's where I'm at the minute. I've got to get myself some board. I'm going to go and buy a new frame for it. You can have them professionally mounted, have a frame to fit. I'm going to see if there's something that fits it. It's square in design, so I'm going to see if there's any square frames out there. If not, I can have one made. So I've got a little bit more materials to gather together before I'm going to do the actual conservation, but I just thought it'd be interesting to share with you what I've discovered so far, and you can follow this journey and see if we can save this beautiful sampler. Okay, so that's it for this Chit Chat Tuesday, folks. Hope you enjoyed that one and you enjoy following along with this sampler project. If you didn't see me getting out the frame with Jonathan and us wrestling it from the frame, then do go and check that video. You can see that out up here. If you enjoy these videos, do give them a thumbs up. Always appreciated, and I'll see you next time.